go ahead and start then. My name is Billy O'Brien, and I'm a candidate for Pierce County Assessor-Treasurer. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight, and thank Roger for putting this together. It's always great to have an opportunity to come out and talk to people and hear what their concerns are. I'm going to start by telling just a little bit about myself. I have never run for office before. I've been with the Assessor-Treasurer's office here in Pierce County for 22 years this month. And about 10 years of that time I spent as an appraiser, working in the field, working in the office, responding to boards, doing all of the things, measuring, putting new construction on the rolls. And then became a supervisor in the residential appraisal department. I had 18 field appraisers that worked under me, and 2 review and appeals appraisers and 3 support staff. And about 10 years ago, I moved into the position that I hold now, which is Administrative Manager of the Assessor-Treasurer's office. And I have responsibility for everything that's not directly related to real property appraisal. So the calculation of levies, the calculation of property taxes, putting personal property on the rolls, mobile homes, the administration of all the property tax exemptions, our customer service team. So when you come into the counter to make a payment or to ask for information or you make a telephone call, those are all staff that I have management responsibility for. I've also acted as Chief Deputy Assessor-Treasurer and had management responsibility for up to about 90 people under the last assessor. My management experience is specifically in the office. My education and background is in appraisal and assessment administration. I'm still accredited in the state of Washington to appraise property, and I still do that. I work with the personal property team and respond to some state boards and things that come in on our personal property appeals. I decided to run for office because of the things that have happened in the office over the last 3.5 years. It's been a very difficult time. A lot of ties with other offices have been broken, with offices that we need to do business with on a daily basis. The Planning and Land Services Department, with the Budget and Finance Department, with the Executive's Office, with the Council. A lot of those ties have been broken, and they need to be put back together again. And I have relationships with all of those departments because of my years in the office. We've also lost ties with outside agencies that we need to do business with. The Department of Revenue, with the Washington State Association of County Treasurers, with the Washington State Association of County Assessors. And those ties need to be put back together again so that our office can run efficiently and run well for the taxpayers of Pierce County. We also need to bring professionalism back to the office. We need to treat our customers with respect, and we need to treat our staff with respect. We need to use them to the best of their abilities. If we're not doing that, we're not doing the job that the taxpayers want us to do. To save money, to be cost effective, to be efficient, we need to use people to the best of their abilities, and that's something that has been lacking. We need to provide them with the tools, with the technology to do their jobs, and with the training to do their jobs. And that's something they haven't had a lot of possibility of doing for the last several years. They need to keep up on their training, and we need to allow them to do that. We need to encourage them to do that because it's important for you, for the taxpayers of Pierce County, that they know what is the latest and the best that they can do to not only appraise property, but to calculate levies, to do all of the other things that we have to do in the office. My experience in the office makes me a unique candidate. I don't think that there's ever been another assessor, treasurer, or candidate that has run that has the kind of background that I do, has the kind of education and experience that I do. I can hit the ground running. I don't need time for on-the-job training. The day I take office, I can go to work. I know the systems, I know the statutes, I know the people in the office, and I know what needs to be done to work efficiently for the voters and the taxpayers of Pierce County. A little bit about me. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone, and I want to thank Roger for putting us together, contacting us. It's a good chance to get to know you better and hear what your questions and concerns are. I am Mike Lonergan. There is a choice between these two candidates. As Billy correctly said, she has spent the last 22 years in the office, moving up through the ranks, and that's good. I value that experience, not only hers, but we have a number of very capable, qualified professionals in the office doing the assessing work and doing the keeping track of all the parcels of property in the community, working with 100 different taxing districts that we have in Pierce County. You know, we have all the school districts, fire districts, water districts, as well as the cities and towns. So there's a lot to do, and we do have a capable staff. Why did I get involved in this race? Well, the last 3.5 years has been horrible in the assessor's office. Through that ranked choice voting, that experiment we had in voting 4 years ago, we did make a choice that turned out not to be a good choice. Abraham Lincoln said, if you want to test a person's character, give him power. And this happened, unfortunately, with Dale Washoe, and there's probably people in this room who supported him, but may have been disappointed because he didn't turn out to be a knight in shining armor. He turned out to be a person who, as he has all through his life, has not been able to work with people, has ended up in fights and lawsuits and threats, and that's really what's happened in this office. Some of the very qualified people I mentioned have actually been moved around to where they're not effective. He took one of the top commercial appraisers who would go out and look at a Kmart or whatever and move that person over to assessing mobile homes, not making good use of their training and ability. All my life I've been a chief executive of various organizations in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector. Of course, a lot of people know I was over 12 years executive director of the Tacoma Rescue Mission, roughly comparable in size to this organization, the assessor's office. And I came in there in a troubled time. It was actually financially troubled, and there was a great morale problem in the mission. And we were able to really turn that around to the point where we were selected as one of the best places to work in Pierce County. Even though it's difficult work at the rescue mission, the Business Examiner newspaper interviewed employees and selected us as one of the best places to work. I want to take that to the assessor's office. Having technical skill, as Billy does, is important. But what you normally have all around the state in these key positions, you have a person who has proven leadership ability. To work inside the organization, yes, but also to work outside the organization. I've been endorsed by a majority of the members of the county council. I've been endorsed by the builders here in Pierce County. And I have worked with these different people over many years. Many of you know I was deputy mayor of Tacoma, on the city council in Tacoma for 8 years. I chaired a committee that we created when I came on the council called the Government Performance and Finance Committee. And we looked at every aspect of government and tried to find ways, did find ways, to make it more effective, better for the taxpayer and better for the employees, and just a more efficient, economical way to operate government. There's a lot of room for improvement. These are tough times. Pierce County budget is up against a wall, and they're having to make even further cuts beyond what's already been made. Of course, be a big newspaper story tomorrow about the city of Tacoma and how they're talking about making cuts of over 100 employees because of things being so difficult. Fortunately, they can do a lot of it with attrition and not hiring vacant positions, that sort of thing. But when I saw the problems in this assessor's office, I didn't need a job. I right now am the executive director of the Youth Marine Foundation down on the waterfront. I was also doing a 2-hour morning radio program on Clay Radio and enjoying that. But I saw a calling here. Somebody needed to get in with these specific skills and address a very ugly situation. There are, at this moment, there are factions within the office, and I think you need an outside leader, a proven executive, to come in and straighten that out, because I don't work for the other employees. I don't work for the Teamsters Union that represents most of them, who has endorsed my opponent, but I work for you, and I ask you to consider voting for Mike Lonergan for Assessor-Treasurer. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll just open it up, kind of town hall fashion. If people had questions they want to ask, just with a reminder to, you know, to be respectful and fair with your questions.
Or if not, we'll go home early.
My name is Philip Bradford, and I'd be glad to present that, folks. I'm really glad that both of you managed to find time in your schedules to come out. I'm not really that familiar with either of you, other than reputation in the community for a lot of hard work. I'm on the executive board of SEIU Healthcare 775 Northwest and a member of the State Rehabilitation Council. So first of all, I want to thank you, Ms. O'Brien, for finding space within your office to hire a Tacoma Goodwill referral with disabilities to maximize her potential, which is what we're all about. And wanted to ask you, you seem to have gotten a preponderance of labor endorsements in the county. Why do you think that's the case? What do you have to offer the average working person, not the taxpayer so much, but the person who is trying to operate within a county which is struggling to balance its budget and maximize its resources?
Well, I think one of the things that I offer is the experience that I have in the office, and the fact that with the things that have happened in the office over the last several years, which have been certainly not labor-friendly in any way, shape, or form, I have maintained on my side of the office that labor-friendly attitude. We have avoided any of the issues that unfortunately have faced the appraisal side of the office. And I have worked over the years as a supervisor and as a manager. I've worked with the unions. I've worked with our Human Resources Department and worked with them to make sure that that our employees are treated fairly and that they do have the kind of representation that they need. I believe that's why the labor unions have chosen to endorse me. I've been very lucky with the Teamsters, who I have been a member of the Teamsters for 22 years, and they have come forward and endorsed me wholeheartedly. I've also had the endorsement of the operating engineers of the Teamsters. The national Teamsters now have come forward. We heard from them today. So. And the the Pierce County Labor Council also has endorsed. I believe that's why, because of the experience that I have in the office. What they're looking for is somebody that knows the staff, that knows the processes, that knows the work that can be done, and I have a proven track record of treating the staff fairly, of being a good manager, and of doing what's right, both for the taxpayer and for the staff in the office.
Thank you.
This is a question. When one takes out a building permit, it triggers the assessor's office to come out and look at the project and place a value on it, which I understand totally, I guess I agree with. What gives those assessors the feeling that they can then roam around the rest of the property?
Well, they actually do, under the law, have the right to do that. It's in the statutes, and they are allowed onto the property to assess whatever they need to assess on the property. It's in the law.
All they need to assess when they're asked to come out is this particular project. I'm not hiding anything. It's just the idea that this person feels free to just roam around my property and look at everything. I mean, if Roger came over and did that and I didn't know him, I would definitely question what he's doing. And I question what they're doing also, because the rest of it really doesn't apply to this particular circumstance.
They're trying to make a fair assessment. You know, if you have issues with topography, with wetlands, with other things going on the property, we make adjustments for those things. So all they're trying to do is a fair assessment of not only your new construction, but also the lot, the property as a whole. Do you have issues with getting onto the property? Is there septic? Is there electric? Is there a well? Do you have issues that might make it difficult to build out more, like wetlands or topography issues? Those are all things that affect the value of the property, and by law, that's what we have to do, is fairly assess and value the entire property.
That's already been done, and the last one is that I'm referring to specifically this time is just a little bathroom, laundry room addition, 150 square foot onto a house, and so they need to take in the whole piece of acre because of that little addition. I disagree with that entirely.
I'll go ahead and respond to that also. Just, I think this underlines an important issue that I want to work on, and that is communication and understanding about how your taxes are arrived at, what the rules and policies are, taking input from the public, and being responsive to the public. I think it's really kind of a black hole as far as how assessments are arrived at, and you get a little green card in the mail that says what, in someone's opinion, your property is worth. You get a tax bill that sometimes, even though the value has gone down, the tax goes up, and you wonder about that. Now, as to your specific question, though, the state law requires that every 6 years there be a physical inspection of the property. The reality is we have 330,000 parcels of property in Pierce County, and like many aspects of government these days, really they are not equally applied across the board. Many of the aspects of government are complaint driven as opposed to going out and doing everything. And when they have an opportunity to go on a piece of property, they are going to look at more than just that.
Well, in my mind, if they would just say, do you mind if I go look at the rest? I'd probably say yes. But when I turn around and see they're 300 feet back there someplace, it just irks me.
Right. I will make the promise that we will better communicate with the public and respect the public more than has been the case.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question too, and go ahead and ask Mike. Because you talked about people understanding the tax rate, and I'll admit I don't really, although I know that for taxing districts there's a lid of 590, which some areas are right at or real close to. But the other levy, I mean, the county comes up with a budget, we need this much money to run, divided by the value of the parcels, divided by 1,000. So for every $1,000 worth of parcel value, for people who aren't exempt for some reason, have to make up that amount, and that's that floating levy rate that ends up your rate for that year. Is there a lid on that percentage, or is it just kind of a floating target that they try to stay under to avoid pitchforks and torches? Or?
Well, there are the two 1% that come into play now. One that's been there for a long time, which is 1% of the value of your property being what you can be taxed. And the other, of course, is that 1% increase in their budget per year, except for new parcels of property coming on. And again, this was a fiasco here just in the last few months, that the office was dragging its feet on getting the new pieces of property on the rolls, and that, of course, works a disadvantage to you. Your piece of the pie could be bigger if we don't bring on all the ones that need to be brought on. So the current assessor had to be kind of dragged kicking and screaming by the rest of county government to get that done. But yes, there are ultimate limits, and then of course you can have voted taxation. One thing to keep in mind, you talk about the county setting the budget. The county gets a share of property tax, and it is important to the county because it makes up over 40% of the total budget, but it's just in the range of 10% of the total taxes collected. The lion's share of these taxes go to the school districts and down to Olympia to the state. They get about 18%. The school districts get over 40%, and with special levies it could be half of your tax bill is going there. So everybody else, fire protection and those who are inside cities and all, the port and other special taxing districts make up smaller parts, but the bulk of it's going to the schools.
And I was really talking aside from levies or tax districts.
Mm-hmm.
So a new construction, that adds revenue, but they pay that same, like if it's 14.3, the levy for the year is 14.3 per thousand, they pay the same rate as everybody else, correct?
Yes, except the rate, and Billy can certainly respond to this because she has done this job, but the rate is an estimated rate, and it's the budgeted amount that does need to be raised for the senior taxing districts such as the cities and the county.
There are some other limitations also. There is the 1% on the budgets, there's the constitutional 1%, there's the 590, and that's a conglomerate of certain taxing districts. There are also other limitations in statute. I think cities, they're limited to $3.36.5, I think it is. Fire districts are limited to 3.50-cent levies. EMS is limited to 2.25-cent levies. So, and there are other limitations also to some other taxing districts that are in the statutes. So there are, besides the 1%, the 590, and the 1% constitutional, there are limits on certain types of taxing districts as to how much they can actually collect.
So, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, so for every property that's missing from the rolls, it's, there's an inflated levy rate, you know, for everybody who's been exempted out or who's not yet been assessed, you know, any new construction that wasn't assessed, or anybody who's exempted, it kind of raises the rate for everyone else, isn't that kind of?
The levy rate, you're absolutely correct. The levy rate is calculated by taking the overall value of the district and dividing that into what the budget request from the district is, and the budget request is limited by that 1% now because of 747. They can't collect any more than 1% over their highest lawful. So you're talking the taxable, you're talking the value of taxable property divided into that budget. You're not talking the property, the value of property that is exempted. So it does make a difference in that calculation.
I'm just trying to wrap my own mind around where all the shortfall is. If it's because, you know, people got caught in this, where they're not paying taxes, or they're sold homes that, you know, or if it's lack of new construction, or...
Well, lack of new construction is part of it, and then the extreme drop in the appraisals and the value of homes has put the junior taxing districts in a squeeze. So we have the seniors, like the county and the cities, but when you get to the fire districts, they are actually experiencing, because of the great reduction in appraisals, they are actually experiencing significant budget reductions being forced on them. So this is where I say we need to get a little better understanding. Not that everybody needs to understand all the ins and outs, but people don't understand the general concept, because the number one question I've been asked out there talking to people is, how come my appraised value went down but my taxes stayed the same or even went up? And there is an explanation.
It actually does have to do, you know, when our values were at the highest, the levy rates were actually lower. If you look back in history and see during those years when we had all of that new construction going on and values were up very high, the levy rates were lower. Now that the values have started to go down, the new construction is much less, that rate, because of that simple arithmetic, that rate is going up.
I got a question.
Sure.
Talking about other taxing districts and revenue, I'm a commissioner in a special purpose district, and ours is collected by acreage and $1 per acreage, and the county collects that for us. When parcels are subdivided, we usually are the ones that have to find out what happened because our revenues went down because they subdivided the parcel, and the new parcels don't get that added on until we tell the county. Is there anything in your computer programming that you think might be able to fix that so that automatically when something's subdivided, all the parcels get that were on a parcel that had a special district, get that automatically added back in?
Are you, is it a drainage district?
Yeah.
What happens with that is the drainage districts give us their rolls one time a year.
Right.
That's just before the tax statements go out. And so we do have some contact with you prior to the rolls going out, and we try to give the drainage districts when there have been changes due to subdivisions of property. But ultimately, it's what you give us that because we don't calculate that, you know, that tax, that fee. It's given to us by your person that does that gives us your roll, and so that's all we know. We would have to know what your rules were, because now if you're saying it's $1 per acre, what if the parcel falls down to, you know, it's only 1/4 of an acre? Are you still charging the $1? Those are the kind of things that would make a difference.
Yeah.
I think I heard you say, though, something's falling through the cracks here. Here's the acreage doesn't change,
Right.
but it's subdivided.
When it's
and
subdivided,
somehow
yeah.
then
Our district's $20 per acre, and so like I have a third of an acre in the district, so I'm about $7. The county collects $3 for collecting the fee. So every time somebody subdivides a parcel, the one that keeps the original name all of a sudden has a smaller amount because they're collecting now for that 1/8 of an acre because it got chopped up, and The other ones aren't added to the rolls.
Has to be
You know, so
clear.
we have to hire somebody to find out that why did this drop, and then add them back in, rather than getting notified that, you know, doesn't seem to be anything that automatically brings new parcels back into the system.
And the problem is because we bill only once a year, and so that bill goes out, and then if subsequently something is subdivided, then it's the next year before that information gets back to us, because we only bill one time a year. So that's where it looks like it's falling through the cracks, but actually, before that next billing, our levy clerk is in contact with the drainage district and trying to update, going through those rolls that you send us and trying to update to let you know if there have been changes. But in between, once that fee is levied, we don't bill again. So.
We have heard from other districts. We were with the fire commissioners just a few days ago, and communication is an issue. There is room for improvement in how those, in effect, the assessor's office is an extension of those 100 taxing districts that I mentioned. So there needs to be real effort made to see what the needs are and how it can be addressed.
I understand that ours is odd in that it's a state drainage district inside the county being collected by the county, and it's not based on a dollar value. So when the acreage shrinks, unless they have added on the other parcels as to something that automatically tags when a parcel is in a district and you subdivide it, that it's tagged that it's still in the district. You know, that's, I don't know if there's anything in there, checks and balances to make sure that happens.
I know that when that happens, what he's talking about, they call them children parcels. And there's got to be a way in the system to just flag children parcels to make sure that if there is something like that on the parent parcels, that it carries off, you know, down to.
Unfortunately, when they send us the rolls, it's once yearly, and we don't keep the information in the system. But there is a way that we can, before you send us your new roll, and if you'll give me your information, your contact information, we can, and I know that our levy clerk has worked with the drainage districts in the past to make sure they get the information, because what it is, it's your billing system.
Right.
You know, you need to know before you give us your rolls what those changes have been, so that you can bill the correct parcels.
Yeah,
We're
so
only collecting just the one
Right.
time.
Okay.
So.
I have a question for both candidates. I know Assessor's Office has never had enough staff for trying to balance between physical inspections and sales and new construction. One assessor favored sales and new construction over PI, and another one favored PI over new construction. So given that it's unlikely that the budget's going to increase anytime soon, you get more staff, how are you going to do that balance act between trying to achieve all of the physical inspections as well as doing all of the sales and new construction that are required by law?
Well, I will say that I've been in contact with other members of the State Association of Assessors, and all the counties have to use modern technology, and the physical inspection, which has been a fixation, almost a fetish for the current assessor, and of course he made the allegation that the law had not even been followed in the past, but you're going to have to use modeling based upon the sale prices of comparables, and of course make sure people are aware of the Board of Equalization Appeals process, because mistakes will happen, and I believe that we follow the same model that's being followed in other counties, the other 38 counties in the state, that you have to use that modeling and other aspects of, you know, Google Earth and ways of being aware of what's going on in your county. It only makes sense to use the technology. And I would say, I've lived in my house for 29 years. I haven't had the occasion of seeing an assessor wandering around on my property. What they actually tend to do is just a windshield survey in many cases in order to cover the 330,000 pieces of property they have to cover, because we're just in the neighborhood of under 30 individuals actually doing the assessing of property now. And you want to keep up, as I mentioned before, with that new construction. It's very important. It's only fair to the other taxpayers that you keep up with that, and to the junior taxing districts. So you're going to have to do that using technology, just as in every other aspect of life. And I'm not sure that by making a point of doing all the physical inspections that have been done in the last 3.5 years, that we've really gained any net benefit from it.
I agree with Mike. Partially, I do believe that we need to find a way to take better advantage of technology. One of the things that I would like to do is work with the assessors associations and look at the statutes that tell us what a physical inspection is. Right now, the statutes say it's at a minimum a drive by the front of the property. There are things that we could use technology-wise that would help us do the job with the staff that we have now. You know, he spoke briefly about Google Earth. There are programs now that you can actually do an overlay on, and they can tell you if there have been changes to the footprint of a property. So you can pick up new construction that might be on the rolls that's not permitted. You can do a physical inspection with a Google Earth type product, literally walking around the property itself. We have aerial photos, we have ortho photos. Those are all tools that we could use that would save us the gas, the time, and the energy from actually driving past a property. You know, some areas it's a very easy job to do, like in the city of Tacoma, where you can drive down the front of a house and you can drive down an alley, you can see both sides, you know if any changes have taken place. In an area like this, where you have mixed use, you have large parcels, you have some small farms, you have different kinds of properties, it's not quite so easy to be able to just drive by and get a feel for everything that's happened. So we do need to take advantage of technology, but to do that, we have to change the statutes. The other thing that we may have to look at, because all of the assessors' offices in the state are in the same condition that we're in. They're facing budget issues, they're facing loss of staff. I think we need to look at the statutes about the length of physical inspections. Is a 6-year cycle in a county like Pierce County or like King County, where we do have so many parcels, is that actually the best use of the physical inspection cycle? Should that be lengthened out somewhat? Are there other ways that we can handle that workload? We absolutely need to do every one of those jobs every year. We need to put new construction on the rolls because it makes a difference to the taxing districts and it makes a difference to the taxpayers. We need to do physical inspections because the law tells us we have to do them. We need to look at sales because that's what feeds our modeling. And Pierce County has been modeling for years. The assessor's office has been modeling properties for years. We have a statistical team that has been doing this for at least 20 years. We've been using modeling techniques. But there are ways that we need to think about to do the job smarter, to do it more efficiently, so that we can get everything done and really serve the taxpayers of Pierce County. But to do that, we're going to have to go and get some statutes changed, because right now our hands are really tied with how far outside of that box we can go.
Have any other counties, because they're all doing the modeling thing, are there any of them that aren't meeting their criteria for the physical inspections that you know of?
I don't know of any, and again, it has to do with defining the physical inspections. And you can go through the motions, and that, I think, is a lot of what happens, is simply going through the motions, going past a property, and maybe if there was a blatant change in the property, you would become aware of it. But when we determine, we put our house on the market, and what a private appraiser or a realtor is going to help you arrive at a price, it really is going to be looking at what comparable properties are selling for in that general area. So that seems to be the fairest way that people are actually, taking out a mortgage on the full value of the house. It seems like that's a fair way also to determine the taxes. I do think that Billy has a point that we need to be proactive about, instead of just saying it's the law, the assessors have to follow the law, to work with the legislature to make sure we're in the 21st century in how we do things. When those laws were written, satellite photographs and so forth were not really even thought of, and so we need to stay up to date. And I will say, because I have testified at the legislature on a number of issues, and worked with our local legislative delegation for years, I'm more than prepared to do that.
How many parcels do you believe existed when you first came into the county, Billy?
Oh, gosh. No, I don't remember, but we had so much growth over the last, certainly not the last like 3 years, but prior to that, I mean, they were subdividing everything. We were running so far behind. There were so many formal subdivisions, huge plats, particularly out in the South Hill area. It's grown so much, and that's one of the issues that we have run into with physical inspections. What the physical inspection cycle entails is that the counties, every county, has to tell the Department of Revenue, I'm going to do these particular physical ground areas. And in those ground areas, there are X many parcels. And so every year, you're expected to be able to do that job. Well, we set that plan up 7 years ago. Parcel counts were much fewer then. They've grown so much that now we have so many more parcels in each one of those 6 physical inspection areas. That's another thing that needs to happen, is to even out that workload to allow us to maybe move some from year 2 when there are fewer into another, when there are more, into maybe year 6 where there are fewer parcels. That's also going to be something that's going to help. The physical inspection issue really is, the assessor's offices say, I'm going to do this piece of the county. It's not a number of parcels, it's a ground, we're doing areas 5, 6, and 7, and there are X many parcels in that area, and when you lay out that plan, you might have 50,000. By the time you get out there in year 6, you might have 78,000, which makes it even harder for you to meet those requirements.
Thank you.
And as a comment, it might be a good idea to do every 10 years after the census, they redistrict, like legislative districts and stuff. Sounds like the assessor's office needs to do something probably along those lines. Actually, I had a question for both of you, since you both brought up satellite imagery, and kind of because, Planning and Land Service was doing satellite imagery, and then they were offered an amnesty program for unpermitted structures. Does the assessor's office assess and tax unpermitted or non-compliant structures, or does that happen at the end of the permitting process after the final inspection? When does it, do you go out and assess a non-compliant structure and start taxing it?
Certainly you have the right to do that, because they are 2 separate issues, but building permits is a major trigger. A good assessor's office is going to keep very close track of those permits, but also use other means to become aware of improvements to property. And on the other side of the coin, to some loss of value of the property for whatever reason. This has to be fair. It shouldn't always be about trying to find, more dollars. The highest dollar. It should be about what is fair, that everybody pays not a penny more and not a penny less than what is their appropriate fair share of tax. And I happen to be of the opinion that taxes are plenty high already. So I think that's where we have to use everything we can to apply fairness. But building permits would be just one part of it.
We absolutely do. If it's non-compliant, we put it on the rolls. That, whether or not the planning department agrees with what they build or how they should build it, that really is not our fight. If there's a house out there, it needs to be on the tax rolls so that because it's getting the services. It's being served by the fire departments, the kids are going to the schools, it's using the libraries, it's getting the services that you're paying for, and so they should actually be on the tax rolls and be paying their fair share of the taxes also. The permit ordinarily is the trigger that gets the appraisers out there to pick up new construction, but we find it in other ways. We get telephone calls from neighbors who say, they built this new house over here, or they built a mother-in-law apartment. We get it from physical inspection cycle when they're driving down the street and they see that there's something that's been unpermitted. And we do put them on the rolls, whatever the change is, whether it's a garage or a new room added on, it does go on the property tax rolls as soon as we're notified of it.
And then the other thing that Paul's comment about the calling for a permit inspection and getting a full reassessment. Now, if that's done on a property, then does that, you know, say it wasn't due for the 6-year cycle for 2 years, would you have to do it again in 2 years? Or would it somehow get a pass? Or, you know, it doesn't make sense to do it again, especially if you're having trouble doing them all.
Again, keep in mind the physical assessments as the physical inspections as they're done right now, I think are minimal. And it might almost be more trouble to try to exclude properties than to include it in taking that brief look at it that I think is really what's being done.
The issue with that really is what I said before about basically saying we're going to do this area. And if that house that we were at 6 months ago to pick up new construction is in that area, we're supposed to be doing a physical inspection on it because that's what we're reporting to the Department of Revenue. It might just consist of a drive-by, you know, somebody signed off on that record and they did a full, complete physical inspection 3 weeks ago. There's not much reason for me to get out of the car and go walk around the house. Chances are nothing has changed in 3 weeks. But yes, it is part of the physical inspection cycle and needs to be at least looked at again, you know, based on that statute, a drive-by.
Well, I'm not a candidate for Assessor-Treasurer, but I say 10 districts, 10-year cycle makes sense. I mean, smaller districts.
That's something that I have discussed with the Assessors Association when I have been in contact with them. I have a very good relationship. In fact, I've been endorsed by Jim Avery, who's the assessor in Kitsap County, by Barbara Gelman, who was the former assessor, and I have contacts within that Assessors Association. It's something that we've talked about in the past. It's hard to find a middle ground because the counties on this side of the mountains are, you know, we have so many more parcels, the parcel counts are so high. Some of the agricultural counties, when you're assessing, you know, wheat fields, acres and acres and acres and acres of wheat fields, a physical inspection is something totally different than it is in an area like Pierce County.
I think there was another question.
I don't know if this is germane to your position, but I'm curious. Several years ago, I'm assuming more than 10, there was significant incentive to this area to build multiple family dwellings, such that it included a 10-year respite on property tax. Has that expired, and if so, what kind of increase in revenue may we be looking for?
Yes, they are starting to come onto the tax rolls now. I was involved in some of that with the Tacoma City Council, and again, councils could set whatever rules they wanted. They didn't have to give that 10-year abatement, but we chose certain areas where we wanted to focus on density and thought it made sense. And definitely we heard that projects did happen that would not have happened otherwise, creating jobs, creating needed affordable housing and revitalizing neighborhoods. But they started several years ago, about 4 years ago, the earliest ones started coming off, and so there's a rolling cycle where those will come on the tax rolls. And again, that's, you know, there were two sides to that argument too. Yes, we want all those things I mentioned, the jobs and development and all, but then people said, but wait a minute, that's, you know, somebody is getting the benefit of not paying a tax for 10 years, so I'm carrying their freight. And yet, if there's a fire call or a police call to that building, they still respond just the same way, and they can put their kids in the schools the same way. So there's a fairness issue, but we did do a lot of that to try to direct the growth where it needed to be ideally.
As Mike said, some of those are now, we've had a few that have come back online after the 10 years. We're still seeing new ones coming out that are just coming into the program. They just created a new zone out by PLU, and there's going to be a project that's going online out there. One of the things about that exemption, though, is The only portion that was exempt was the building value, so they were paying a full tax on the value of the land. It was just the building value that was exempted. So we kind of had to, there were kind of two things going on. They were paying taxes on the land, they weren't paying on the building value, so. But there are still quite a few projects, particularly in the city of Tacoma. I think there are a few in downtown Puyallup. Not every jurisdiction within the county took advantage of the multifamily exemption program.
We're not looking at that as being a windfall in the near future.
I don't know about a windfall, but it will certainly help.
Yeah, and it'll be gradual, because again, some, you know, they didn't have a whole bunch right at once. It was over the years.
I would just want to add one thing to that, for it to happen in the county, it has to be within close proximity of an institution of higher learning, which POU was the only place in the county that qualified for that under the, used to, you know, just cities could do it, but for the county to do it, it had to be in close proximity to a university, and also, it wasn't just that they had to pay the tax on the land and not the building. They're taking over school land that is currently tax exempt, so they'd be actually paying higher tax than what the land value, the land taxes currently are.
And they're also, it's also part of that project is that there is a certain portion of it that has to be low-income renters. And that's something that will be looked at every year to ensure that they are abiding by that portion of their agreement with the county. So that's going to help out, you know, another portion of our population.
Are students automatically considered low income?
I believe most of them probably are.
Phil,
Part of this is rhetorical. On the subject of low-income renting options, many people in this area have found affordable rental property, unfortunately, because of the abyss of property values in this hard real estate market. So I suppose I'm rising in support of Roger's proposal that perhaps we stretch out this assessment period. It would seem that a decade-long look at the market would allow it to go through its vacillations and not catch us at a period where our overall property values in the county are at a point where it's going to suck dry revenue resources which are desperately needed in some of the, for example, social services programs that help people get back on their feet, which are, you know, looking at another, you know, several percentage point cut in this upcoming budget.
That's dear to my heart. You know, that's where I spent most of my career, between the Salvation Army and Rescue Mission, 20 years. So I appreciate that. I guess if I could just say this, which I think is important, there's a difference between management and leadership. We need good management in the assessor's office and at the various levels, including the administrative position that Billy has. I think we do have that. I am running for this office from the leadership aspect. That's where you do step back and look at the big picture. And there's a lot of detail every day that you need to do, and particularly in this office. It's quite intricate. But someone needs to be stepping back and looking at the big picture and saying, now, not just how do we do this more efficiently day by day by day, do more with less, but how do we do it more effectively? How do we take a look at the big picture? And if that involves changes in legislation, if that involves cooperative efforts with other counties, working with other public officials, that's what I stand prepared to do. And that, again, I think is a unique and proven skill that I've developed over a lifetime. So I just want to say, I hope you will vote for me because I want to keep Billy doing that excellent job of and I want to solve some of these issues that you talk about that are beyond the day-to-day.
And I appreciate your confidence in me, Mike, but I would say that you'll just vote for me and keep me in the office doing the job that I'm doing now, plus being assessor. When you get me, you get a working assessor-treasurer. I know the systems, I know the people, I know the statutes, I know the timelines. He's absolutely correct. It's a very intricate job. There's a lot of pieces to it. There are many teams, there are many things that we do. They all have different timelines. They have to fit together. I know how that works. For the big picture, I believe that what I just told you was those ideas to go to the legislature, to talk to work with the assessors groups, to work with the treasurers groups to make those changes. I think those are the things that I was just telling you about. So not only do I have the small picture, which is very, very important, I also have the big picture because I've been doing this for a long time and my experience is there. So I say your best bet is to vote for me, and that way you get 2 for 1.
Thank you very much.
I have one last question. At the commissioners meeting last Thursday night, there was quite a few commissioners concerned about, and asked a question of either of you of the dollar amount taxes that is exempt in the company. Does either one of you have any ballpark figure?
I remember that question was asked, and no, I don't have even a ballpark figure. Just to say that there are many huge properties in our county, in many counties, that are tax exempt because not only public properties like parks and schools, but private entities like PLU and University of Puget Sound and so forth are qualified for an exemption because the judgment has been made they provide something of value, and that when my years as an executive director of a nonprofit organization, some people thought we paid no taxes. We paid a lot of taxes. We paid sales tax on our purchases. We paid the payroll taxes, you know, everything that gets paid in. But we were exempt from income tax because, of course, you turn all of your income in a nonprofit by definition back to the business. And then we were exempt from property tax if the property we had was in a bona fide charitable use. If a property was donated to me and I was simply holding it as an investment to sell and make money for the operation of the rescue mission, that was taxable property. It wasn't being used for a good purpose. But I'm certainly able to find out that number, but it's distressing that if the fire commissioners want to know, they should be able to find out.
Yeah.
Because the assessor's office is there to work for you.
And you absolutely can find that out. We can get those numbers for you. You know, we don't, with exempt properties, we put them on the rolls. The statute doesn't say that we have to physically inspect them every year, so they're not necessarily being updated. The statutes say that we have to physically inspect taxable property, not exempt property. But we could certainly, if the fire commissioners are interested in that information, it's very easy for us to get. There are a lot of exemptions, you know, there are a lot of varying types of exemptions. There are your municipal, there are your, you know, your church, your nonprofit, and then there are other, you know, so many other ones, but we could certainly get some idea of acreage and value if the commissioners want it.
I'll get with those people and ask them what they want to do.
Sure.
Thank you.
That last topic actually brought up a new, not so much a question, but I mean, what your guys' opinion? It seems to me like there's a real big push now for people converting over to open space, which I know doesn't negate the tax, but depending upon the point system that they're given, you know, as far as is it a flood plain or there's different points that they can accumulate, and like if you've got 6 points or 4 points, then they get a certain tax reduction on that, and I don't know what the moratorium is or how long they have to remain open space or if it ever gets converted back, but you know, it just seems like with the economy, it's puzzling to me, why is there such a big push? And I know that's not on you guys, that's kind of a council thing. It just seems like there's a lot of open space going on right now, and it seems like now isn't a good time to be lowering our...
I think what they're trying to do is preserve some certain types of land, farmland, agricultural land, and some of the open space land that may have streams, may have salmon habitat, may have other issues like that. That's what they get their points for. If the property comes out of the program, if they don't, you know, we watch these very closely, and if they're not using it like they say they're using it when they sign those contracts, whether it's trees or farming or open space, we take them out. And when they go out, they have to pay the back taxes that they did not pay. We put the value back on, we recalculate it based on the tax rate going back 7 to 10 years, and they have to pay that amount, and if they don't pay it, it becomes a lien on their property. So if they decide to sell, then the county does get that back tax amount. So the use has to be continual. There's no timeline on it. The minute you go against the contract and you're not, you're not farming it anymore, you're cutting down the trees and you're not replanting, it comes out of the program, the back taxes become due, and it depends on the program. Some are 7 years back, some are 10 years back. We go back, we recalculate what you paid, we subtract, and the rest you owe. So there is a kind of a parity there if they do remove it from the program.
And I was just going to say that this kind of underlines that there is a dual purpose to taxation. That the primary purpose of taxation is to provide for the common good, the needs that can best be provided by government. We can argue about what those are, but then the other purpose, Milton Friedman, the economist, said whatever you reward, you will get more of, and whatever you tax, you will get less of over time. I mean, it just makes sense. And so the tax code, not only property tax, but if you think about the federal income tax, it's used to encourage people to do things such as to give to your favorite charity, buy a home. There's things that get you tax deductions. And same with property. There's a big push right now because they say that Pierce County was actually, in a way, the poster child for poor growth management, sprawl type growth. And that in an effort to save some things, there's become a very strong lobby for let's do what we can to give somebody an incentive not to try to convert their property to the next development, but to maintain it in a more natural state. So it's a balance, and it just comes to the assessor's office really to carry that out. But it's more at the policy level of the state legislature and the county council to determine how far they want to go in that direction.
Anybody have any other questions?
Mike, if you get elected, do you see any problems working with Billy? And if you are not elected, I know you've held many offices and many jobs. What job do you see yourself doing?
Well, I'm just on a leave of absence from the Youth Marine Foundation, where I work with the Sea Scouts and the Park District and other organizations, public and private, Girl Scouts. We do activities to get young people oriented toward careers on the water. So I would go back to my work, but I feel this is a calling. The first part of your question, I know you're wearing an O'Brien button, so I've made this clear everywhere. There's nothing but good reviews for the work Billy O'Brien has done. She's moved up through the ranks, done extremely well for herself. I think the position, correct me if I'm wrong, you're paid over $100,000 a year for what you do. So, she earns it, and I would want her to keep doing that job.
And what would happen to the position that you're on hold from right now? Would they be left in the lurch?
No, actually, they've been extremely cooperative, and in fact, I talked to them today. I still keep my hand in and advise and direct what I need to, but I'm on a leave of absence, as I say. But it'd be just like when I left the Tacoma Rescue Mission. They did a talent search and found the right executive director and brought them in, and that's what the Youth Marine Foundation would do as well. And in fact, I would aid in that process. So I've already talked to a couple people who could assume that role. So no, that's just the nature of
So you're saying you're not really needed there anymore?
Well, if anybody else heard me say that, okay. But I'm not sure if that was a gotcha question or what.
Just ask.
I've left every business and nonprofit and government agency that I've ever been connected with in a lot better shape than I found it, and there's always been continuity. Nobody has collapsed or gone out of business because everybody, I believe, can be replaced.
I guess that brings the opposite question. Billy, since you're employed, by the department. What happens if you're elected to your position?
I will no longer be an employee. I will have to resign my position and I will become Assessor-Treasurer. I will continue to do the work I'm doing now and also oversee the functions of the appraisal side, which I have not been responsible for some years. It will be just another day for me. I'll continue to do the work that I'm doing now. The reason that I decided to run was because I believe in the service that we're doing for the taxpayers. I believe in the staff in the office. They've come through a very difficult time. They're excellent. They all work very hard. I'm very lucky that I've been endorsed by most of them. Most of them have been supporting my campaign. And that's very humbling when the people that you work with have that kind of confidence in your ability. And so it'll just be another day. It'll be in a different office, but be another day.
Okay, final question from me. Got to be snarky once. Who's Dale backing?
Dale got 11% of the vote in the primary election. There are still some folks who do back him, but I would think that his endorsement, since 89% of the people voted for a change in the primary election, his endorsement would be a kind of a ball and chain that you'd be dragging around. I don't think it would be helpful. So I have not sought his endorsement.
Wouldn't be too
Very well. I want to thank you guys for
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
he's endorsed me.
Yes.
Yes, he has.
Thank you.
And Spiro Manthau, who also ran in the primary, endorsed me. So
The one gentleman who came in under Dale.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming out and fielding our questions, and there's a lot of coffee left in the pot and some cookies up here. If you guys would help us get rid of that and maybe just talk a little bit after the meeting.
and I'll put, I see Billy has materials over there, I'll put materials there.